I want to thank Senator Bob Graham, a man who has driven this issue since 2002. I'm not even going to begin to tell you what he has done, from court action to other types of action, because he knows that the truth will set America free. So with that, I introduce the esteemed Senator from Florida, Bob Graham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I too want to thank Walter and Steve, Congressman Jones and Lynch, for their leadership in bringing this matter to the attention of the Congress. I want to thank the family members who have been, without question, the most influential force in all of the changes that have occurred as a result of 9/11, and will be the most significant force in terms of convincing the President that it is time to give the American people the truth. Needless to say, my remarks that I will espouse this morning are considerably different than they would have been but for events in Paris this morning, which in my judgment bring this matter into its proper focus. But first, a little background. After 9/11, it was clear that the Congress was going to be called upon to conduct some form of an inquiry as to what happened. The decision by the leadership was to combine the intelligence committees of the House and the Senate into a single body, for the first time in the history of the Congress that had occurred, for purposes of carrying out this inquiry. The inquiry took the year of 2002. It included interviewing hundreds of witnesses, tens of thousands of pages of documentation, leading up to an over 800-page report, which was submitted in December of 2002. Some 6 months later, the declassified version emerged, and we were shocked to see that an important chapter in the report had not been redacted. That is, as Congressman Lynch and Congressman Jones said, a word or a phrase here or there, but an entire chapter. Now, since that chapter continues to be classified, none of us can talk about it in public. But I think it's fair to say that it is a central chapter in terms of understanding who was the support network that allowed 9/11 to occur. When we saw that this chapter had been eliminated, there was an immediate outcry. Senator Dick Shelby, Republican from Alabama, who had been the chair and was at that time the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I issued a statement to the effect that we were intimately familiar with that chapter. We considered it to have no adverse effect on national security, that it was important to the overall understanding of 9/11, and it should be released. We have subsequently been joined in that by others who were involved, including the chairman of the House Committee, Porter Goss, who wishes that he could have been here today to participate as well, and subsequently the Citizen 9/11 Commission's two co-chairs, Lee Hamilton and Tom Kaine, have also advocated that these 28 pages be released. Shortly after the declassification process ended, a letter was prepared, signed by almost half of the membership of the United States Senate, bipartisan, including Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts, and Senator Clinton of New York, all calling upon President Bush to release the 28 pages. What have been the consequences of this refusal to release the pages? And let me say while the 28 pages are maybe the most important and the most prominent, they are by no means the only example of where information that is important to understanding the full extent of 9/11 have also been withheld from the American people. So the comments I'm going to make are specifically about the 28 pages, but more generally about a pattern of cover-up that for 12 years has kept the American people from a full understanding of the most horrific attack against the United States in its history. The consequences, in my judgment, are three. One is a denial of the truth. A core question in 9/11 is, did these 19 people act alone, or did they have a network of support which facilitated their ability to carry out a very complex plot? No one who has looked closely at the facts, including the individuals that I just named, have come to a conclusion other than that it is highly improbable that the 19 people could have acted alone. Yet the official position of the United States government has been that they did act alone, and that there is no necessity for further inquiry into the question of whether there was a support network. We're now in the 150th anniversary of the American Civil War, and we've had a national history classroom over the past few years as incidents that were consistent with a date in the current era coincided with a date during that war. One of the pieces of information that we have learned, at least I have learned, is that President Lincoln had a policy throughout the war that every message that came into the government, specifically into the State Department, was a matter of public record on a daily basis. His feeling was that if the support of the American people were going to be maintained in a war which was increasingly bloody, many loss of lives and loss of treasure, that it took the confidence of the American people that their government was conducting itself in an appropriate manner, and that the key to that confidence was disclosure. I wish we applied the Lincoln-esque standard to what happened in 9/11. The second issue is the issue of justice. Some 3,000 members of the families who were lost on 9/11 have been trying for years to get justice through our system for the losses that they have suffered. The position of the United States government has been to protect Saudi Arabia. At virtually every step of the judicial process, when the United States government was called upon to take a position, it has been a position adverse to the interest of the United States citizens seeking justice and protective of the government which, in my judgment, was the most responsible for that network of support. Again, an example from the Civil War. The British had signed a neutrality agreement with the United States that they would not be involved in the Civil War. It was found out subsequently that, in fact, their shipyards had been building military vessels for the Confederacy. After the war ended, the United States didn't forget. It did not walk away from the negative effects of Britain's perfidy. Rather, it pursued it and finally secured a recognition of what the British had done and some compensation for the consequences of their action. What a difference between the way this country saw itself as a proudful defender of justice for its citizens and what we are experiencing today. The third consequence is the issue of national security. And frequently those who have defended non-disclosure have said this cannot be made available to the American people because it will be adverse to our national security. It will affect methods and sources of information or other information that is inappropriate to be made publicly known. As the two congressmen have just said, they both read the report, not 12 years ago as I participated in writing the report, but they have read it recently and have both come to the same conclusion that we did a dozen years ago, that there is no threat to national security in disclosure. I'm going to make the case today that there's a threat to national security by non-disclosure, and we saw another chapter of that today in Paris. Here are some facts. The Saudis know what they did. They are not persons who are unaware of the consequences of their government's actions. Second, the Saudis know that we know what they did. Somebody in the federal government has read these 28 pages. Someone in the federal government has read all the other documents that have been covered up so far. And the Saudis know that. What would you think the Saudis' position would be if they knew what they had done, they knew what the United States knew what they had done, and they also observed that the United States had taken a position of either passivity or actual hostility to letting those facts be known? What would the Saudi government do in that circumstance, which is precisely where they have been for more than a decade? Well, one, they have continued, maybe accelerated their support for one of the most extreme forms of Islam, Wahhabism, throughout the world, particularly in the Middle East. And second, they have supported their religious fervor with financial and other forms of support of the institutions which were going to carry out those extreme forms of Islam. Those institutions have included mosques, madrasas, and military. Al-Qaeda was a creature of Saudi Arabia. The regional groups, such as Al-Shabaab, have been largely creatures of Saudi Arabia. And now ISIS is the latest creature. Yes, I hope and I trust that the United States will crush ISIS. But if we think that is the definition of victory, we are being very naive. ISIS is a consequence, not a cause. It is a consequence of the spread of extremism, largely by Saudi Arabia. And if it is crushed, there will be another institution established, financed, supported to carry on the cause. So the consequences of our passivity to Saudi Arabia have been that we have tolerated this succession of institutions, violent, extreme, extremely hurtful to the region of the Middle East, and a threat to the world, as we saw this morning in Paris. So I conclude by saying this is a very important issue. It may seem stale to some, but it is as current as the headlines that we will read today. It is an issue that goes to the core of the United States contract with its people, that the people would give the government the credibility and support to govern. The government would give the people the information upon which they can make good judgments as to the appropriateness of governmental action.